Hey everybody, Gratuin back with another video. And today's video is going to be a little bit different than my usual videos because one, I'm going to be presenting some of the media that I would normally put in post a little differently than I would normally do through some of my normal editing processes and stuff. And also because of the subject of this particular video, I felt that it would be better to actually kind of like show and explain as I go rather than trying to like recite it all from memory and use bullet points. I don't do well with bullet points, honestly, and I don't use teleprompters. I just kind of make it up as I go along, honestly, which is how most of my videos go. So I wanted to show you guys a series of images and kind of explain again how, what all of this is and what all of it means, basically. So for those of you who haven't seen it, my friend Joel came down and helped me install a radio control system in my CL-83 battleship that he built several years ago. And then several years later, I went ahead and painted and did some detailing and did some design with it and stuff. And finally was like, okay, we're ready to install an RC system. Let's go. Let's do this kind of a thing. This video is going to be talking about some of the post-install challenges I ran into and really learning about how water works and how wood works in relation to water and how expansion, contraction, all that fun stuff that goes in it kind of works and everything. Because I've really and even just reviewing some of the photos within the last couple of minutes of me putting this video together, I really noticed some interesting things I didn't think about until again, a couple of minutes ago, and it's kind of a thing. I'm going to go ahead and flip over to my main computer screen, and I'm just going to walk you through all the documented photos that I took and explain what all this is about. So this is the photo that I took on the day that my friend Joel and I installed the RC system. This is kind of like this is what our workspace looked like. I realized when I filmed that video, I didn't have a very good camera angle, and considering the fact that my yard is rather small, Joel and I were kind of working in the constraints that we had. So that couldn't really be helped, unfortunately. But anyway, this was our workspace, and this was just after we slipped you can see it there, the rudder shaft and the propeller shaft in here and stuff. And this is kind of like some of the progressive shots that I took after Joel had nicely greased the shaft that needed to be, greased up and everything, so they, run nice and smooth and everything. This was the final product after we were all said and done, kind of a thing. And these are some inside shots. I've actually done a little bit of organizing as far as some of the electronics are concerned post install of everything, so it doesn't look quite as messy as it did then. One of the things that I ran into after everything was installed was I ran into some water leaks. You may sort of guess where this is kind of going a little bit here. When Joel and I had installed everything, we thought everything was sealed. We had put it in the bathtub after we installed everything. We really should have done some longer testing. I would rather make the case to argue that we should have let it sit 15 or 20 minutes or so just to make sure nothing was leaking into the ship and that everything was as sealed as it should have been. And obviously this was a couple days later. I forget what I was doing on this particular day when I took this photo. I guess I was just doing some leak tests, I guess, to make sure that everything was fine, to which obviously this is not fine. The house is burning. This is not fine, obviously. Yeah, so this is kind of just my first initial warning signal that something was definitely wrong. And you're not supposed to have water in a ship. Obviously, nobody wants a soggy ship.
Not me. That would be no good. That'd be no good.
This is sort of some of the undershots I took. So I basically, after I discovered this problem, I went ahead and started texting Joel and saying hey, there's leaks in the ship and stuff. What do I do, basically? And he's like, well, send me some photographs of the underside of the ship. Let me see some of the hot glue jobs. So if we zoom in a little bit here, it's kind of hard to tell, but I think that there was definitely some unsealed areas in here where the shaft was basically that definitely had some problems. And as I'll show you and you'll discover later, this was definitely had some serious problems that just kind of got progressively worse, unbeknownst to me over time and everything. So my initial thought was that, and his initial thought was that, hey, just, add some more hot glue, see if you can kind of seal it up. Maybe the hot glue needs to get reflowed a certain way to kind of help block up the holes and stuff. Go ahead and try it, see what you can do. So I think this one and this one is some shots where I had tried to seal up more of the ship to prevent water from coming in. And then I did some more testing and stuff. And obviously, that proved that really wasn't the solution. I was still having water leaks and stuff like that. And then the rudder shaft started leaking with it. So this is obviously a problem that's now getting to be an issue because this isn't supposed to be happening at all. So I went ahead, told Joel, what I did. I went ahead and texted some more photos. You can kind of see a little bit here. And this is just some debris from the bathtub. My only testing facility was the bathtub, unfortunately, so I apologize for that. But you can kind of see where like it's, you know, there's obviously something going on here that is like, you know, preventing, that's like causing water to come in and stuff. And it doesn't look like that tight of a seal, realistically speaking. So these are just a series of shots I sent to him as we were talking back and forth and stuff. So I tried adding a little bit more hot glue and tried doing testing, and it was still leaking. So you can kind of see a recurring theme here a little bit. Like adding more hot glue was just not really like solving the problem. And also I want to point out something interesting. If you look at the initial shot here, notice how this wood is not that split, right? So like this wood is, it really wasn't that split at the start of everything. In fact, actually this shot in here shows it really well that there was no wood splitting at the time. So something's obviously starting to happen that I was not catching originally. And I think up to this point here, I thought that because Joel was kind of like hard with the drill a little bit when he went to drill the holes in the ship, I honestly thought he had cracked the wood at the time. I thought he had cracked the wood, and I thought like, oh no, like, you know, the wood split and he was too hard on it. Like, what are we going to do, kind of a thing. And so I think this is some other shots I took of like trying to add more hot glue and trying to like get it like really sealed. And actually, unfortunately, the hot glue gun kind of heated up the solder here and like tilted the rudder down like 1 degree, like 1 or 2 degrees downward, which is not how it was originally when Joel had first installed. The thing is, you can obviously see like it's straight on, and then but up to this, it's tilted down. Thankfully, that 1 degree of offset is not that bad. It still turns really, really well. So I'm not too concerned that it's not as straight as it could be. Ideally, I'm sure it should probably be a little bit more straight, but like whatever. So anyway, so yeah, so again, like recurring theme, more hot glue, more testing. Oh no, it's still leaking. So like this is starting to like frustrate me up to this point. Cause I'm like, this is not sealing. Like there's something obviously wrong that is, it's getting progressively worse, right? So my thought was like, oh, well, originally when I went to go seal the ship, let me zoom out here. Originally when I went to go seal the ship, I had used Flex Seal, white paint, and paste under, you know, to seal to seal the outer side of it. And then I used the gray paint by Crayon that's a paint primer thing. And I went over that with it. And then finally I went over it with Flex Seal Clear. Okay, so the final coat of it was Flex Seal Clear, and I did 2 layers of that, and that did seal the ship. Like it's definitely watertight. Water is not coming in anywhere else. And so my thought process, I was thinking like, you know, what would seal this, right? Like what is the perfect like sealant here that I need to use so that this ship stops leaking water? And, you know, sometimes it's not a good idea to like mix and match materials. Like I've heard that sometimes depending on what it is that you're doing, it's never a good idea to like mix like one element with another element because it would interact weird, or like one painting thing with like one, you know, sealant thing or whatever, because they would interact weird and things like that. And my logic finally kind of concluded on the fact that I think that since the ship was sealed in Flex Seal Clear, I should use Flex Seal Clear again to see if I can actually like seal this whole thing up and call it a day, basically, which is what this photo is about. Now, I know this looks weird. Let me explain. It was my mom's suggestion to put a part of a plastic bag over the propeller to protect it from the paint. And it was my dad's suggestion to put a cotton swab in the rudder shaft so that it would actually keep paint from flowing down into the rudder shaft, because obviously you don't want like it to dry and then have it like get tight or mix weird or whatever and stuff like that. So these are the suggestions of my parents that they, you know, they thought that they thought I should do this. So I did 2 layers of Flex Seal Clear on the propeller shaft, on the rudder shaft, you know, seemed like it was a good idea. And then I did some water testing. And so this is where I had done the sealant with the clear stuff, and I was letting it sit and stuff. Now, what I started to notice also, and again, this is like showing this is getting progressively worse. Water was starting to come in on this side, on this area here where the wood is kind of like just sort of sitting at the bottom of the ship, and then there's basically cardboard, and then like there's the hull that's cardboard. And I was using a piece of white tissue paper to kind of like be a detection, a very simple detection to be like, hey, is there water? Is this wet after 15 minutes? Yes or no? And I think that initially I had thought that I had sealed it, because after 15 minutes of that sitting there with a piece of toilet paper there, basically tissue paper, whatever you want to call it, it was dry. Like I was like, okay, cool. like it's dried, it's sealed, awesome, we're ready to go play with it, fantastic, you know, da da da. But wait, there's more. Now, these photos here, these are actually waterline markers that I made out of stripped cuts of vinyl. This is measured at 1 inch, 1.5 inches, and 2 inches. The reason why I wanted to add this was that actual ships have waterline markers to help the people that operate the ship to tell them how high or low the ship is sitting in the water. And different types of water, whether it's fresh water or salt water, actually affect the buoyancy of a ship, basically. And, you know, granted, this is a model ship and everything, and that I'm not going to really be selling it in salt water because salt water is very hot on brass. It's very abrasive, obviously. I won't be doing that. I still thought that, like, hey, you know, 1, for historical accuracy, and 2, for my own insurance, outside insurance and everything, I wanted to have waterline markers that would tell me how low is the ship sitting in the water, because it also tells me that how much weight do I need to add or reduce in the ship to allow it to be, like, you know, stable one day or not so, or not so heavy another day, kind of a thing. So I went ahead and made these, and then I used Flexio Clear once again to seal it. And this is, the ship actually sits at just above the 2-inch mark. So that's pretty cool. So it doesn't really sit that low in the water, which is pretty interesting to me, honestly. Now, during testing, I also want to know, like, how deep of water does a ship need to be in before it floats, because the running hardware kind of like sits, it kind of protrudes out a little bit beyond the flat part of the ship, the underside and everything. So it needs about, I basically measured it with the tape measure, it needs about like 5 to 6 inches to float in the water, or have about 5 or 6 inches of depth before it can float safely, basically. But unfortunately, during my testing, guess what I ran into? Another water leak. And I was like so frustrated. I'm like, why is this happening again? I thought I sealed this. And it kind of got interesting after this. So I took a photo, and it's really hard to see. So this is underneath the ship. This is with the rudder removed. Now notice something. This here, this green stuff, what that tells me is that, and I'm actually kind of glad that there was marine grease. I'm really glad that this was here, because you can see the direction that it's taking. So it's not leaking in this direction, it's leaking in this direction right here. And so when I got closer to it, I realized you can kind of see a little bit. There's like a really tiny, tiny microscopic crack. And when I went to push on that, kind of squishy, like it wasn't firm, like it was, you know, sealed basically. It's leaking beyond the Flex Seal, right? No, wrong. What it's actually doing is it's leaking in the rudder shaft itself. This shaft has, or this hole has basically expanded. And what's happening is that the wood, and I didn't think about this, I just genuinely didn't think about this. Wood expands and contracts due to moisture, okay? Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. Those of you who do woodworking, I'm sure are freaking out and yelling in the comments right now. I'm sorry, I don't do woodworking. I forgot this. It's not something that I work with on a daily basis. It's not something I would have thought of working on this project. So basically what has happened is that Joel did drill the hole. He probably did it properly. But as it's been exposed to moisture over time, expanding, contracting, drying, expanding again, contracting again, whatever, this hole, just by the nature of wood and physics, has basically opened up a lot more. And so obviously this is the source of our leak now. So this is basically what has happened. The whole thing has basically opened up and allowed water in. Now, out of the suggestion of my mom, actually, to add Teflon tape to the rudder shaft. Now, let's shift our focus a little bit here, okay? So up to this point, I'm thinking of this as, this is a model ship that has a hole, right? Like this is a marine problem. This is a naval problem. This is something that like engineers would have like dealt with this, you know, if they're building a new ship or whatever. Of course, obviously sealing an actual ship is a lot easier than sealing a model ship. But the point is that I, up to this point, started to, and I'm going to tell you, the power of learning to shift your focus about and looking at a problem from a different angle is so helpful. So I kind of took a step back mentally a little bit, and I thought to myself, you know, realistically, what I'm dealing with here is not a model ship problem. It's kind of a plumbing problem when you think about it, right? So if you think about like plumbing, right? And you run plumbing into a house and you've got to run a water line through a house, you're going to need to seal it from the outside elements, right? So you got to have some way, there's sealants for that, right? And I didn't think about the idea, the fact that this is basically me taking a pipe and running it through wood into something. And that little reshifting of perspective changed how I looked at the entire problem altogether, which was just mind-blowing for me, honestly. So as my mom and I were talking about this problem, and she was kind of like following me along with this sort of thing and stuff, she's like, well, why don't you wrap Teflon tape around, I'm going to call it a pipe for the sake of discussion here, wrap it around the pipe and then put it into the ship. And I'm like, but Teflon's normally used for putting on like screw threads for piping. How could it work for, well, okay, I guess. And so what I ended up doing was wrapping several layers of Teflon tape, and I put the pipe into the ship to help seal it. And you can kind of see here. So I spent at least, I'd say two or 3 hours actually just wrapping this with several layers, and I mean several layers of Teflon tape. And I used a little metal prying tool from my iFixit and actually stuffed the hole with the Teflon tape. So I would basically wrap it around, stuff it in, wrap more around, push it in, and rinse and repeat several times. So I had like some really solid layers of this Teflon tape. And then I found I'm going to skip to the end here. I found this. This is Loctite Marine Easy Cure Adhesive Sealant. And I bought this stuff at Home Depot. And I'll tell you, trying to talk to the representative at Home Depot about my problem, certainly an interesting discussion, you can imagine. But anyway, I took that and I applied it to here, and I did squeeze the stuff in, patted it around, and then squeezed it in. And you can see now, guess what? This is now a sealed hole. And then I did the same thing. So I did the Teflon on the inside, did several layers of that, stuffed it down the hole, and just filled it in the best I could and everything. And then I put some of that sealant. Now for an extra safety measure, because I knew that I was having potential water leaks on the side where the mission critical stuff was, including the rudder being the most mission critical, I went ahead and put some of that marine sealant all along here to kind of help like stuff and fill in any kind of gaps for like water leaking and things like that. So that's what that's all about. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, Grid, like, why didn't you use the marine sealant on the propeller shaft if you're going to do it on the rudder shaft? And that's a great question. For the moment, the propeller shaft is not leaking. And I felt that for the sake of just kind of leaving well enough alone, I am not going to put marine sealant on it for now. Unless down the road, I start having problems with it, I don't want to touch the seal that I've got now and then risk causing more water leaks and, kind of going back to square one with all this kind of stuff. So for right now, I'm leaving that alone. The main focus and the main issue really has been the rudder shaft. I did that and I reapplied the servo. I did a little bit of marine sealant on this part because this was really starting to crack like really, really badly. And these are just some of the finishing touches. I let it dry for 24 hours or so. This is actually part of the testing process. So I went ahead and put it in the bathtub again, let it sit for 15 minutes. I also changed the, I forget what this is called. There's a naval term for this. Fun fact, the thing connected to a rudder is called the tiller, which is then connected to what's called a tie rod. I changed the piece that connects to the servo because this other piece was kind of like completely unnecessary. So I just swapped it out just for something simpler. Yeah, so back to this. So let it sit for 15 minutes and it was watertight for now. It hasn't leaked. What I really need to do is, now it did leak a little bit, but I think what's actually happening is that and this is something that Joel talked about with me.
And you want to have the top of the tube maybe a half inch higher than your water line, than your highest water line, because you can set your ship to different levels depending on how much ballast you stick in it.
Right.
For either if it's extra windy that day or whatever you need, or if you want to do like speed, or if you want to do extra stability.
Yeah.
You put more weight on for stability. You want that to be nice and high so that the water does not come in the ship, because you do not want water in the ship.
Of course not. Who wants a soggy ship? Not me.
That would be no good.
That'd be no good.
So I know for a fact that my highest water line on the ship, because of those markers I put on it, is 2 inches, right? So with that in mind, it is possible at the moment that water is going up into the rudder shaft itself and kind of going up over the side of the shaft rather than going up through it like it was before. My quick and easy solving for that was just simply adding a lot more marine grease, which is supposed to be a natural water repellent. So for now, there's a pretty good thick layer of marine grease actually underneath where this connection is for the, this is a set screw that connects to the rudder here. So there's a good thick amount of marine grease right now that's sitting here. And I'm just going to kind of leave that as is. And just when I get to take it out to somewhere larger like a lake and kind of sail it around a bit, I'll know a lot more to see like, hey, are we completely watertight or is there more to be done here? As a backup plan, I recently got a Dremel and I actually cut these two pieces right here. And if my water line for the rudder shaft is not high enough, I plan to actually add either this piece or this piece. And I'm probably going to like tack glue it on and then seal it with the marine sealant stuff that I bought to kind of help make this water line for the rudder shaft a little bit higher. And then as a little footnote, the ship has a little audio speaker of some sound design that I did, and I kind of made like a little makeshift seatbelt for this. So this is being held in by Velcro straps that kind of go around the speaker, connect via Velcro, go back around, and then loop over this main beam part. So that was because the problem is that the speaker was kind of shifting the ballast weight of the ship, which wasn't helpful. I also cut two pieces of, I had some metal weights that I cut in half with a Dremel, so I have extra metal weights to kind of help bounce out the whole thing. So that was a long-winded discussion to basically say that essentially what happened is that the wood just simply had moisture to it. It expanded, the hole for the rudder shaft expanded with it and was letting water in. So this was a really interesting project. It was just a lot of, I ran into a lot of things I've just never run into before, because again, this is not something that I do that often, or really at all, actually, for that matter. And to be able to kind of teach myself about how this works, you know, how the physics work, how does water flow? Why does water want to flow in this way? You know, what seals this? What will seal this? What will make this watertight? There was just a lot of learning that went into this whole project. And honestly, I'm kind of like, I'm frustrated about it, but I'm kind of thankful about it too, honestly. I think like having complicated problems like this really can definitely expand your knowledge base, so that if you run into something like this later in life, or if you run into somebody that's running that ran the same problem that you run into, you can be like, hey, like I've been through this. This is what you do to solve it. So this is what I did, and it worked for me. It probably could work for you too. That's basically the process I went through to sealing my RC battleship. And so for right now, as of recording this video, the ship is sealed and hopefully it'll stay that way. I do plan to make a follow-up video of sealing it in something bigger than a bathtub. I will include maybe as a little bonus, some like footage that I took of it just kind of sailing around the bathtub, so you kind of just enjoy the fact that it runs and it sounds really cool and everything like that. So it's pretty fun and satisfying. People would beg the question, well, if you were to do this again, what would you do differently? And I think actually what I would do differently is probably, I probably would use Teflon tape again at the initial build of the ship, or whatever model ship I plan to make, which I do plan to make later down the road, just so that there's like, because you could use rubber O-rings, but those could also potentially go bad after a while, depending on how they're exposed to the water and just moisture in general, because rubber can dry out over time. There's lots of weird issues you could run into with it and stuff. So I probably would just use simply Teflon tape, and then I would use more of that Loctite marine sealant to seal the holes properly. I think that really makes a huge difference on that. And also because that particular sealant is made to be used above and below water. So it's like literally perfect for the situation. And definitely using marine grease is something that I'll be, in fact, actually I have a whole tube of it that I'll be still, courtesy of my friend Joel, that I'll be using to kind of help keep everything, you know, running smoothly, and I can use it for future projects and things like that, and other applications altogether entirely, actually. So yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know this is kind of a long video, but I hope you learned something along the way. If you did, please let me know in the comment section down below. If you have any questions, any suggestions, what would you do differently if you were in my position and discovered this problem? Please, I want to know about it. Comment below. And otherwise, I believe that is all I have for you today. So thank you so much for watching. I've been trying to stream on a non-regular schedule with my friends. We've been playing a lot of Helldivers 2. So if you guys like tomfoolery and nonsense in my off-the-cuff political commentaries, because I love political satire and it's funny to me, please join me at twitch.tv/grid21. And otherwise, I will see you guys in whatever next video I produce. Thanks for watching. Catch you later. See ya.